Well, for more on this story, let's bring in political analyst Nour Odeh, who joins us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Good to have you back with us, Nour. The Israeli cabinet, via Netanyahu, made comments regarding this truce, saying it's still of the view that a permanent ceasefire is not possible, that one would only aid Hamas in the longer term. It seems that the two sides are further apart than they've been in recent weeks on this issue of a ceasefire. Do you believe the claims that Netanyahu is purposely trying to sabotage any truce?
I think the evidence is abundant in that regard. Netanyahu faces serious charges. He faces the threat of going to jail. Certainly, most Israeli analysts believe that he would lose control and would no longer be in government once this war wraps up. And so the families of Israeli captives, a lot of the figures of Israeli opposition have accused him of sabotaging several efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement. And yet he continues to stick to the point that the Israeli right, his coalition partners, want, which is a zero-sum approach, that they would enter into short-term agreements, they would get the hostages out, but that they would go right ahead and resume the assault on Gaza, resume that genocidal war with the hope or the declared intention of completely destroying Hamas, which every Israeli expert has told the government would not be possible.
Hamas, for its part, is maintaining its stance and calling for a permanent ceasefire in return for the release of Israeli hostages and the release of Palestinian prisoners currently being held by Israeli authorities. If neither side is willing to budge from these stances at this point, what happens in terms of a truce? Is it essentially a dead in the water?
Well, I think we need to distinguish between the declared end goals of both sides and what is on the table right now. What's on the table right now is an interim deal, if you will, a deal that has to that is related to 33 Israeli captives, women, minors, and the elderly. It does not include all Israeli captives, and so more negotiations would be needed for a second phase of an exchange deal between Hamas and Israel. In this deal that is on the table, we heard from the mediators that Hamas showed flexibility, that it accepted the idea of going into this without a commitment from Israel to end the war, which Israel has refused to do. But we also heard leaks from the American administration that it gave its word that the war in its current format would not continue, which is, maybe a little bit of playing with semantics. But basically what it means is that the Americans don't want to see an Israeli invasion of Rafah, which would be absolutely catastrophic. They will not stop defending or supporting Israel's attempt to go after the Hamas leadership and the Hamas military wing, but they want to see things calming down and moving forward and going into a completely different direction, which in many ways I think diametrically opposes Netanyahu's agenda of continuous war, of staying in power, of avoiding legal consequences, not just of his own charges of corruption, but also of the failure of his government and intelligence agencies on October 7th.
Okay, Nour Odeh, we will have to leave it there. We will keep an eye on those ongoing talks in Cairo. However, thanks as always for joining us.